Whoa, those are some aggressive claims directed toward the recent work of one of cinema's most beloved figures. But it's not difficult to see where they're rooted. For the entirety of Jean-Luc Godard's film Goodbye to Language, you, the viewer, are bombarded by oversaturated, disjointed, and blown-out clips, paired with unsynchronized sound coming from every direction at arbitrary intensities. A couple, a dog, trees, a baby. Wait, what? What did I just watch? According to Godard, the idea is simple. A married woman and a single man meet. They love, they argue, fists fly. A dog strays between town and country, the seasons pass. This all ends in barking, and a baby cries. Even when presented with the synopsis by Godard himself, one still feels a sense of, that can't possibly be all of it. So what is language? And what does Godard have to say about it?
Che gli vada ancora meglio, non resistono quei compagni che li han riconosciuti ed arrivano I pomodori ed per difendere gli sfruttatori.
Humans can't communicate. Only communication can communicate. This concept may seem counterintuitive, to say the least, but it presents itself as a good launch point to understand some important ideas about language in Goodbye to Language. In this claim, sociologist Nicolas Luhmann is simply inheriting and developing a key point from Ferdinand de Saussure as radicalized by Jacques Derrida's deconstruction. The insistence that communication is, above all, a social fact. Among some of Saussure's work is his distinction between the abstract system of language and the actual individual instances of words coming out of your mouth, known as parole. They work together. Lang narrows down the possibilities of parole so that they may lead to understanding. And the existence of parole is what allows Lang to be created in the first place. An example of this in action is the word cat. You use the word cat to signify this thing because of an agreement by many people that this thing can indeed be signified by the word cat. Parole creates Lang, Lang dictates parole. So why does this matter? Well, since all messages must, to a degree, abide by the rules of an abstract system to be understood, some of the actual message can be lost in communicating that very message. The options for parole are broad as you move away from understanding, and they narrow down as you move close to it, because of the gradient and funnel effect created by Lang. To communicate effectively, you become limited and imprecise in how you may signify a message or idea. If I asked you to describe these two colors, what would you say? You'd likely describe the left box as light blue and the right box as dark blue. But what happens when you add another box? Is it lighter blue? What if there's another one? Is it lighter, lighter blue, and another one? Lighter, lighter, lighter blue, and another one? And I don't know. As this continues, we are confronted by an uncomfortable truth. Language can point to reality, but it can never truly represent it. The meaning of any signifier cannot, strictly speaking, be fixed and located anywhere, since what it is also a product of what it is not, other elements and rules of the system. Thank you, Derrida. So the word blue is not just commenting on the blueness of a thing, but also the lack of redness or yellowness of a thing. It is a concept derived from both what it is and what it isn't. It's a relational term, one that cannot be completely fixed within itself. And bred out of that ambiguity is imprecision. Oh, I see. So Godard is mad that words aren't accurate. Well, not exactly. See, there's nothing inherently wrong with this imprecision, and Godard doesn't think so either. This imprecision is precisely why things like poetry exist, because ambiguity allows us to explore better ways of illustrating concepts outside the traditional conventions of a language. What Godard takes issue with, and what he wrestles with through Goodbye to Language, is that he also believes that there exists a value system in this relationship. This value system gives more importance to being understood, and therefore, parole populates this section of the graph. Language that communicates is deemed more valuable than language that may be more expressive but less clear. So this isn't really the case in writing. We don't typically consider poetry less valuable because it's not always immediately clear as something like a manual. No, the language Godard is referring to is cinema. When this graph is superimposed onto cinema, some interesting themes emerge. The parole in cinema are the different film techniques employed, whether it be dollies, close-ups, or jump cuts. The long would be the repeated use and then formalization of these techniques into an agreement between filmmaker and viewer about what film techniques can and should be used to communicate different messages. And because of this implicit value system, people are incentivized to only use techniques that favor this side of the spectrum. A linear narrative, happy endings, etc. These are all examples of techniques throughout cinema's history that have been formalized because they're easily understood. And since people have decided that understanding is valuable in film, studios and filmmakers keep using the same damn techniques. This viewpoint is prolific. Ease of understanding, control of language. It's what most people consider to be good cinema.
So much of today's filmmaking is all over the place, to the point where the viewer has to exert themselves more to compensate for a lack of focus.
Godard is really not okay with this.
Adieu.
He believes that the freedom of a message and the understanding of the viewer exists on the same plane. They're equal in value. And the problem with this value system is that people have stopped exploring what else might be out there. Goodbye to Language is fascinating because it's Godard's scornful and unapologetic detest of cinema's stale language and the systems that govern it, a concept not at all new to the 85-year-old director. This is what brings us to 1950s Paris, the birthplace of French New Wave. It was here that Godard and a group of other young filmmakers first took cinema by storm, attempting to capture the life of the everyday French via crude portable camera setups. Godard felt that movies were lacking in innovation, and so he decided to create his own. His film Breathless is famous for making the jump cut popular and acceptable in cinema. Films were edited at this time to follow a smooth and logical progression from scene to scene, character to character. Godard completely did away with his generic formula for storytelling. He played with everything from color to sound to even breaking the fourth wall, inspiring an entirely new generation of directors to come.
They brought to editing was a breaking of the rules. Whatever books that said this is how it had to be done, they burned them.
A common theme in Godard's work was medium sensitivity, that is, making the audience extremely aware of the fact that they're watching a movie underscored. This fascination translates smoothly into his work in Goodbye to Language, where the combination of disjointed, manipulated, and grainy clips don't even attempt to fool us into thinking this is real. He pokes fun at cinema's rules and idols.
Quand vous voulez que quelque chose soit entendu, vous le dites au moins deux fois. On prend simplement un couple et un chien. On a gardé le chien, mais on a pris deux couples.
And pushes the limits of what is possible with cinema with a new approach to 3D. Goodbye to Language is explorative, ambiguous, and unapologetic about all of it. Through it, Godard is once again challenging viewers to rethink what can be a film and how a story has to be told. However, despite all the parallels, Goodbye to Language can't simply be described as the 21st century new wave. One of the most influential theories on modern cinema was refined in the new wave, la camera stylo, which literally means that a director should use film like a writer would use a pen. The idea that a director could have his own flair, style, methods, or visual trademarks was revolutionary for this medium. This was French New Wave's way of taking control away from the studio and putting it back into the director. But in Goodbye to Language, Godard doesn't necessarily do that. He pulls footage from popular culture and stock databases. He doesn't even prepare a script before filming.
J'ai cru qu'il fallait faire un scénario, mais il y a 70 ans, là, comme les diplomates ou les...
And for half the scenes, he's not even there. His approach to Goodbye to Language mimics the modernism movement in visual art.
There's a lot of desire to get away from that sensibility where the individual's expression was put into the canvas. The idea was that the art object, be it sculpture or painting or installation, should kind of be as far removed from the author as possible.
Godard experiments with stuff like 3D to find new ways to tell a story. But the actual story? Well, that's completely up to you. Unlike French New Wave, which took power away from the studio and put it into the director, Goodbye to Language now takes power away from the director and places it into the hands of the viewer. Goodbye to Language embraces the ambiguity of language instead of trying to control it. And through this ambiguity, the viewer is encouraged to project their own interpretations, emotions, and beliefs onto the work. The couple, the dog, the various disjointed clips, the philosophical texts, whatever that is, they are, to a degree, arbitrary, functioning as a sort of Rorschach test for the reader. So maybe you think this film is garbage. Maybe you think the text is meaningful. Maybe it's about a couple, or maybe it's really about the dog. What images do you cling to? And what does that end up saying about you?
Resta che ribellarci e non accettare il gioco di questa loro libertà, che per noi vale ben poco. Non ci resta che ribellarci e non accettare il gioco di questa loro libertà, che per